Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Show podcast. Today we're joined by Kirsha Campbell, a cash flow expert with 15 years of experience helping restaurants and franchises manage their finances. Kirsha specializes in setting up systems that reduce risk, boost cash flow, and create a solid financial foundation. She's here to share practical tips for restaurant owners looking to build sustainable, recession-proof businesses. Kirsha, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Gordon. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me. It's quite a privilege. I've been so counting down to this moment, and thank you for having this type of show. It's so needed.
We are extremely excited to have you on the show, especially with someone with your level of expertise. Everyone always needs to be looking at their books. Everyone always needs to be looking at, a solid financial foundation. You're here to help us with that. Before we jump in, though, Kirsha, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and about your journey, about how you got to where you are?
Oh, sure. So I've worked in various industries in the corporate space, various industries, types of businesses, and that has honed my experience to be able to customize those corporate strategies for business owners on the smaller side. And I have worked with various size clients as well and various stages. It's always really exciting to see the growth and the results. Outside of work, I'm usually volunteering in the community in certain ways on certain boards, as well as, working with homeless persons too. And outside of that, I'm usually outdoors, hanging out with my family. We enjoy outdoors. So that's me in a nutshell. I've also authored a few books, co-author as well. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. I would love to hear more about the books that you've authored as well. We'll give you a chance to plug those for sure. So, Kirsha, listen, what are the key financial challenges you see restaurants facing today, and how can they better manage cash flow to stay ahead?
So definitely the key ones I see the struggles with are those that impact the profits in the most impactful, in the biggest way. Food costs, labor costs, of course, sales, and definitely management of their cash flow. So it's, that feast and famine cycle, or even when sales are low, there's not that buffer to go through that season. So definitely labor cost, efficiency, having workers who actually understand what to do, work at their optimum level, getting workers too, depending on where you are, there's a struggle to find skilled workers, and also handling wage rate as well. For the food costs, definitely prices are an issue from both what you're selling your products and services for, as well as the input costs, those supply chain factors, and inventory management. For those who do have inventory, that's usually a tough financial challenge to really find that sweet spot. How much inventory should I have? Should I not have too much? Handling that portion as well. And sales. So oftentimes the focus is on sales, and we need sales. However, if your sales aren't profitable, if your sales are not profitable, and again, leading to cash flow, leading to money in the bank, that's another financial challenge that I do see happening over and over. And overall management of cash and also risk, that's a big one. A lot of persons aren't keeping their eyes on the riskiness of their business, even though you are a franchise as well.
In the restaurant industry, it's common knowledge, and we're not saying anything new. Margins are very, very thin, so keeping a close eye on, your costs and your sales margins are just really, really important. Jose?
Well, I'm just curious about how can restaurant owners set up systems, right, to make their business more recession-proof and minimize financial risk. I mean, I say this because every year someone's saying that there's a recession coming. And so how can they...
Some say it's here. Some say it's here.
Yes,
I don't know.
some do, exactly. Some do say it's here.
So then what can a restaurant owner do? What kind of systems can they set up to at least give them some peace of mind?
It definitely starts with understanding how your business works, understanding that every decision that you make will be impacting your cash flow in some way. Cash flow is now your bank account balance. Cash flow is that movement of actual dollars and cents out of your business. So the first step is to understand that every decision you make will either lead to money leaving your bank account or money coming in. So when you understand that premise, then that definitely sets the tone now to set the systems up. So managing cash coming in, you want to definitely keep your eyes on accounts receivable. So you need to have a system for collections. So you shouldn't have a case where persons are owing you for a long time. And even though you're in the restaurant industry, there are certain times, depending on what's happening in a restaurant, you do have sales that are done on credit. You might have a catering issue, catering function, a big order for a company. Those are things you need to keep your eyes on. Don't let it go unattended to unmanaged. Definitely get those monies coming into your business. So again, on the flip side, definitely it's important to look at, monitor and manage, have those systems for monies leaving your business. And that means don't pay too much for labor. So you got to have a system where your team is trained. There are standards and systems that must be maintained. So it's something as, I'm not going to say simple, but what a key process is, for example, scheduling. You got to look at the mix of those who are on the team at the shift. So look at the team dynamics. Do you have too many weak persons? Do you need more training? Do they understand the standards of your restaurant? So these are some of the things you got to look at. Food cost as well. Again, quality. You don't want to serve substandard products and meals and food. So you got to look at, make sure you're getting in that, the lettuce has good quality. Not only it starts from the receiving section, whoever's taking in the order, they're managing that to ensure the quality of the products are definitely where we need it to be, and also serving your clients. Another thing too is having a system where it is clear, there's no overportioning. So all these things add up. So it's a system to make sure you're managing all areas of your operation. And again, the key things that will help, having training for your team, setting standards that need to be maintained and adhered to. And of course, there's a process. So again, you don't want persons taking too long to make a meal, too long to serve your guests. So definitely, how can we speed that up and not compromise quality? So all these different systems will lead to consistent cash flow. Another thing too is where you have situations where you struggle with getting certain quality products. So again, keeping your eyes on having the right supplier, having several suppliers, having several options. So all these different systems do lead to building, your restaurant to have that recession-proof stamina and definitely weathering the storms which will come.
Wow. So it's standardizing procedures, basically manage it like a manufacturing facility if you can. Be careful with receivables, friends and family when you do the catering, and don't let them not pay.
Don't let those accounts receivable slip.
Exactly.
Right. We gotta go collect it.
Exactly. Be careful with your suppliers. Try to maximize the operation so that the staff is actually producing value rather than just cost. Wow, there's a lot of things. So you work with franchises and
Yes.
food and beverage businesses. What are some common mistakes restaurants make with budgeting, and how can they avoid them?
One of the common mistakes is not budgeting. A lot of persons, they're like, I'll just go off my gut feeling, or, not having a proper process for budgeting, forecasting. So, for example, you got to know with budgeting, how many guests are you expecting to come? You might not hit the number exact, but you must have a plan. So, for example, depending on the season, are there weather issues that will affect persons coming into your restaurant? Are there, for example, functions or, events happening that will cause an influx in person coming? So you got to be aware of what will affect your guests coming in. So understanding how to budget. So one, the common mistake is not budgeting, and the second one is understanding just the right way to budget. And when you set that budget, a common thing I see, a common mistake, you have a budget and you're not using it. You gotta use your budget to manage your business. And that means that one, when you have your budgeted results, Then you have your actual results. You do what's called a variance analysis, cross-checking. We budgeted sales for $1 million, however, we're at 850,000. Why is that? I call it diving into the story behind the numbers. So finding out what led to that under sales amount, and also vice versa. If there's an influx, which is always good, why did that happen? So using your budget to really manage your business. And that helps with cost constraints, that helps with growth strategy, so many things. So you're here and your budget should not be over there. You're working together. And another thing too, that a common mistake is not involving your team in what's happening in your business. And I'm not saying you should be showing your team the entire budget or your bank account, but key numbers, your team needs to be involved. So for example, your supervisor or your manager, they need to know what the budget is. They need to know this is what we need for sales. How can we get it? They need to come to the table, be trained, have that responsibility that this is how we're going to meet that sales number or surpass it. So those are the common mistakes I see in the whole realm of budgeting and forecasting. And a quick one too is a lot of times persons are budgeting for sales and profits, but they're not budgeting for cash flow. It's totally different. And that can lead you to not being able to manage unexpected costs or downturns in your business. You got to be prepared. It's not only budgeting for sales, expenses, profits. You got to budget for cash flow as well.
So is like keep buffers and be careful with the seasonality and check out, monitor inflation.
You got to budget for a rainy day. You got to be prepared
Exactly.
for these wild swings and, seasonality, a weather occurrence, something could happen. And it's, but sometimes it's scary for a business owner to, you talked about diving into the numbers. And I think that a lot of business owners just, like you said, they go by feel, but even if they do have a budget and they've either, gone over their budget or they're in the red, it's like this knot in your stomach and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to look at those things. And what you're saying, Kirsha, is that you gotta rip off the Band-Aid and you gotta look into the numbers. Am I right?
And yeah, definitely. And looking at numbers, it can be overwhelming. I think with myself and technology, there are some areas of technology I'm like, overwhelmed. No, I guess need somebody to get this done for me. And another thing we have to remember too is that your business is ultimately responsible. So take step by step by step. It's a process to really understand what's happening. However, it is important to understand exactly what's happening. For example, a common question I get asked is, I made all this profit, why is it not in my bank account? So when you even understand the difference between profits and cash flow, that's even driving understanding, managing your business strategy to a deeper level. And these are the things that as restaurant owners, even if you're in the franchise industry, you need to be on top of these things, understanding what's happening, because you got to be able to change your strategy quickly. There are times when you got to switch quickly in terms of what you might be selling, what product, you got to be on top of that quickly. So these are things that will definitely help with your strategy and definitely help with that fear. So it's a real fear, and that's okay. Face it.
And you know what? That's a really great segue into my next question. Look, a lot of restaurant owners, they struggle with planning for long-term growth. It's tough to see the forest through the trees, as they say. What strategies do you recommend for creating a sustainable financial plan that ensures success over time?
So with planning is not a one size fits all. You got to look on where do you want your restaurant to go? Do you want to, for example, have 10 locations, 20 locations? Do you, for example, want to become a franchise? Another key one is, where do you see yourself in your business? Is it that you gradually want to be out of the day-to-day operations? Will you have your children, your spouse, a partner coming in? What do you want to do? So I always start with, it's like the end in mind. What's your exit plan? What is your exit strategy? It can change. However, this plan will incorporate so many strategies in your business. It will affect the type of business that you set up, a corporation, sole proprietor, your tax plan. What are the things you need to plan for with taxes? Also with team, right? If you're the sole proprietor, if you're the sole person now, I mean, you can't physically be in your business forever. There are going to be changes. Your life dynamics might change. So in planning, you got to start replacing yourself first. It's a scary thing to do, delegating, when you think of your sweat equity. You've built this business from scratch. However, for your business to grow, you can't physically be there all the time. You're going to have a transition where you're able to look at higher strategy, and someone can be in the day-to-day. And it's tough sometimes getting qualified persons or someone like you or better than yourself as an owner. However, those are some of the things you need to look at definitely with planning. Look at long-term. I like to also use this concept, what if analysis. What if there's another COVID, for example? What if there's
Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that. Sorry, go ahead.
What if there's a downturn in the type of food, in the demand for the type of food you're selling? So these questions, these what if, helps with planning. Answering these hard questions helps you to now plan, right? And for example, there are times where, especially we saw it in COVID, where persons could not physically come into the restaurant a lot of times. So the next plan for some persons were to send them the food, and online they're showing you what to do. So even though you're selling food in your restaurant, there are a lot of other options for getting streams of income under the whole services that your restaurant can do. Take home foods, they're there, that you've already packaged. So looking at those hard questions, addressing them. If you're not sure about the answer, that shows that there's work to get done. You got to incorporate all these moving parts as you are planning. And also, never forget, your plan is not cast in stone. As your business dynamics is changing, as you find your restaurant needs are changing, the demand of your guests are changing, feel free to change your plan.
Very well said. Absolutely. And I think there's definitely a common theme with this episode. And I don't want to say it's fear, but there's apprehension around taking a hard look at your accounts, taking a hard look at your margins and all of the financial aspect of your business. From your experience, Kirsha, how important is financial literacy for restaurant owners? And I gotta say, I've got a master's degree in business, and I know my co-host here, he's got 2 master's degrees in various fields, and I don't want to go near my accounts. I still rely on a bookkeeper, to manage our books, and it is scary for me at times. I know the gist of it. I'm a pretty intelligent guy, but how important is financial literacy for restaurant owners, and what steps can they take to improve their understanding? Do they need a degree in accounting? Tell us about that.
I would say definitely it is the heart of your business. Why most businesses fail? Lack of paying attention to their numbers. There's this common myth also, oh, this company just went bankrupt overnight. It's never overnight. There are signs that are missed or ignored. So the more you understand the finances in your business, the more your business is positioned to be recession-proof, positioned to weather those hard storms, positioned to grow. So definitely it is very, 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 very important. I do understand that it is overwhelming. And I had a client once, and they never had a shortage of cash or anything. However, they just kept looking at their bank account. So they never even knew about financial reports. But here they were in business, a husband and wife, for years, right? And the danger with that is when you have a downturn, you're not prepared for it. When the red flags are showing, you're not prepared for it. So you got to look at your finances. It is hard. It is overwhelming, but take those steps. You don't have to understand all the accounting jargon. You need to understand key things. You need to have a reliable person also who is looking in detail at what should be looked at. So some key things I'd quickly say you need to be aware of are, what is your labor cost rate? What should that be? What is ideal? Your food costs, what is that? Are you way over too low? What is the average profit margin, that is in your type of restaurant industry as well? You need to be aware of key numbers like that. You also need to be looking at your balance sheet. Some persons just talk about profits. in the end, it's what you own and what you owe others, the value of your restaurant. Even if you're under the franchise model, it is very applicable. So financial literacy is very, very, very important. You also need to be looking at your numbers on a monthly basis, right? Looking at the right numbers. Not every dollar that's spent will impact your profits in the same way. And not only you, get your team involved. Your manager should know this is what we're targeting for labor costs. They need to understand these things. Your key team members for sure. So financial literacy, I can't stress it enough. It is important, and I agree it's overwhelming. Take those first steps. It will be okay. It will be worth it.
I'm feeling better already. Thank you so much.
I'm curious, would you, when it comes to, in the case of the couple that took too long or they were not organized by the time they maybe contacted you, or do you recommend like someone like you can help model in an early stage or later and then backtrack? Like what is the best approach about a restaurant organizing themselves?
The best approach is to start from you have your restaurant open. Even before you know you're going to open your restaurant, you got to start your planning. You got to, have these conversations. I was just last weekend training some business owners, and they did want to open a restaurant, and we were there talking, and they wanted to open a coffee shop. So I was like, what are you going to sell in there? They said coffee. I'm like, what type of coffee? There's espresso, there's different blends of coffee. You got to look into these things. What are the costs of the pastries that you're selling? So it was very overwhelming for them. However, they realized that they need to look at the details, manage the details. What type of cup are you going to use? What type of water? So start from day one. From you're going to have a business, you want to open this restaurant, start from there. If you've started with a plan, not everything will be applicable at the beginning. However, the knowledge is there, and it's coming, you grow and scale as the systems change. Another thing too, if you're already in business, you're not looking at these things, it is time to start. So wherever point you are at along the business stage of your restaurant, it is always time to start looking at what is happening, what needs to change as well. So definitely I say, whatever stage you're at, it's always, always, always applicable.
And so for those that are like already there and are in this flow of the restaurant industry constantly evolving, what advice do you have for them looking to adapt financially while still maintaining a solid foundation for growth?
You have to look at where you want your restaurant to go. That's the first thing. Look at what is your long-term plan, even if you're not too sure, but have a plan. The next thing is to look at what is happening in your restaurant. So there's so many changes taking place. Robots are on the horizon. What does that mean for you? How can you embrace artificial intelligence? It's not bad. I mean, not all areas of it is bad, but all about efficiency. So again, changing your restaurant, the model, sometimes it can be as something like you have to change the type of equipment you're using. You might have to change the type of cutlery. Right now, there's so many environmental changes and rules. Plastic is being eliminated. So being aware of what's happening in the restaurant industry, inside your restaurant industry, and the outer environment, the external environment. So the more you are aware of that, you're able to be innovative, pivot quickly, plan, and definitely have the strategy. So regardless of where you are, you're keeping your eyes on all the moving parts of what's happening. Be aware of, if robots are on the horizon now, what does that mean for my restaurant? How can I embrace it? Sometimes it could be, instead of manually doing your books or using Excel, you move to an accounting software such as QuickBooks, for example. It could be, instead of you as the owner processing payroll, you outsource it. So there are a lot of things as your business is growing, as your restaurant is scaling, the dynamics are changing. You got to make sure your systems and processes are meeting those needs. You will always outgrow your systems and processes, so be aware of that. You don't want them to outgrow you and so forth. So regardless of what's happening, look at opportunities to change. I like to look at continuous improvement, always, always, always getting better.
Kaizen, it's one of my favorite philosophies. And yeah, I think it's very, very important, like you say, to keep a mind open, but also an eye on the horizon, because there are so many changes coming, and following the leaders usually gives you at least a signal of what is to come and how to tackle it. Do you agree?
I do agree, because we don't operate alone. So there's sometimes you're looking at other restaurants models, they might be doing something different. It's not that you're stealing their idea. It might not be for you. However, you got to be aware of changes that are happening. Yeah, you got to think ahead. Let's say we have 10 persons coming into your restaurant in the morning and they have to wait 1 hour. How can we get them out even faster? So it's always looking for those areas for improvement in your restaurant. Always be on the lookout for that. Educating your team. So for example, your team should have a sales mind. Like we had a situation where in one of our franchises that when it was time to close, everybody, the team were just in close mode. So someone would come in and say, I want to order, let's say, a pizza. And, oh, we can't sell that now. Everything is all cleaned. So understanding and educating your team that when you say that to a guest, that's a sale lost. The guest might be frustrated and never come back to. So always, if it takes, having to clean the equipment again, that is quite okay. But educating your team to have these minded focus. So again, your team needs to be on board with your vision, your strategy, the plan you have for your business as well.
Well, there's one thing
Fantastic.
that I do know is that the robots definitely are coming. They're already here. We had the COO of Kura Sushi USA, Robert, on the show a couple of months ago, and they're literally working with robots. And he got us a little bit of a snapshot of what operations are like, front of house, back of house, utilizing robots. And it's really a remarkable thing. Kirsha, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for joining us. That's all the time we have for this episode. But now is your time to plug away. Where can people connect with you? What is your platform of choice?
Definitely LinkedIn. You can always find me over there sharing tips, sharing strategies. So LinkedIn is the best way to find me. And of course, say hi. I'm always happy to connect with people, and you can follow me. I do have my newsletter too, where I send out weekly tips as well.
That's amazing. So Kirsha Campbell on LinkedIn, then, I guess?
Yes, that's it. That's
Excellent.
me.
Excellent. We'll also link in the description of the podcast. Speaking of plugs, this podcast is sponsored by Dynpricing, real-time restaurant profitability. Speaking of profitability, you guys, Dynpricing. Dynpricing uses artificial intelligence to improve restaurant profitability by dynamically updating menus across digital channels like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks again to Kirsha Campbell for joining us. Please reach out to her, hit her up on LinkedIn, go to her website, sign up for her newsletter. Until next week, say goodbye, Jose.
Kaizen, continuous improvement. Goodbye, Jose.
Amazing. Kirsha, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was really fun to have you on. Looking forward to bringing you back on the show and talking a little bit more on how to balance our books.
Yes, no problem. Thank you, gentlemen.
Amazing.
Thank
Have a
you,
wonderful
Kirsha.
day.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.